Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. Plenty to talk about today, and to do so, I'm joined once again by Alison McConnell. How's it going, Alison?
Not too bad, thanks. Yourself, Sean?
Aye, good. Aye, late one last night for both of us, I think. You were at the game, obviously. Your man-by-man ratings are on the website if anyone fancies a read of them, of course. But before we get into individuals and individual incidents, just tell me what you thought about the performance in general.
I thought it was very comfortable for Celtic. I thought Dundee United started in those initial exchanges with a bit of intent, but then as soon as Celtic got the goal and Callum McGregor's put them in front, I thought Celtic were very much in command of the tie. I'd struggled to remember a save that Joe Hart had to make. I think there was one Ryan Edwards shot that went over the bar. I can't really think of anything else that you had to do within the game or any point when Celtic were really put under pressure. I thought there was maybe a brief flurry again at the start of the second half where United looked to open it up again, but then of course when Giakoumakis nets the second, I think it was just a tie over. But I thought it was a very competent, very composed and controlled performance. I think could have been more. I thought there was a goal chopped off that I think could well have stood. And I thought overall, the scoreline was fairly reflective of the dominancy that Celtic enjoyed within it.
I can agree. I think they obviously did enough, certainly. But for instance, the last time they won 3-0 at Tannadice, it's not quite up there with that performance. But then again, there's been very few performances this season that would measure up with that. That was a genuinely all kind of comprehensive performance, that one. It's a cup game, and the scoreline could have been even wider, I think. And I think it should have been. That leads us on to the kind of individual incidents that I mentioned. We might as well take them in chronological order, to be honest, even though I'm obviously referring to the disallowed goal there. But the first one was the opener. You kind of referenced it there. Callum McGregor. It was a short corner to Forrest from O'Reilly, who gives it to McGregor. And then it was a low shot deflected past the keeper. Now, I kind of done a piece on the set pieces a couple of weeks ago, Alison, and that was the third short corner goal this season. I still get the impression that there's not too much routine work going on with these corners, and I'd be kind of interested to see what the plan was if McGregor wasn't shooting, or if it was always for McGregor to shoot. The way that the Celtic players bunched up in the box and then made darting runs, I don't think it was. I think he just decided that was the best option at the time. Turned out it was, obviously. But I still don't get the impression there's much routine work going on at these offensive set pieces, but they've been scoring from them recently and they all count, eh?
Yeah, and I thought there was something actually quite telling at the game, because Forrest and McGregor celebrated, that you could sense their delight that it had come off, which actually made me think that it was something that they had worked on, just because the minute it went in, the two of them kind of looked at one another and were obviously delighted with it. But I think at times Celtic's corners and set pieces have been frustrating. I think sometimes there's been a tendency to go with the same formula all the time, to go with that short corner at times when it's not been working. But yeah, I think they'll just be pleased to have one come off, and as you say, that's one in the last few weeks. There's been a couple that have come off, but I think as well you could look to be more effective still from set pieces.
I'm going to put this one up before we move on to the second incident, because I got a very poor 7 out of 11 again. I'm going to need to stop second guessing Ange Postecoglou. He's in my head rent free. I keep thinking he's going to rotate people he's not going to rotate, and then that's a couple in a row. It's been like 7 out of 11. I think you were 9 out of 11, to be honest. I think Tony was 8. So it was me that get the wooden spoon in this one. But you're right, Charlie. It was as good as yours, probably. So moving on to the second one, which not the second goal, the second incident, which was Rayo Hatate's tackle on Kieran Freeman. Have you seen it back at all, Alison? And
I've not actually seen it back, and just the way that the press box is at Tannadice with people in front of you, I had a view of it, but not a fantastic view of it, if that makes sense. I knew Freeman be the colour of his boots, which is how I could identify him, but I thought the pace that Hatate went in to the tackle could have given a decision to make. Haven't seen it back. It just straight after the game, I had seen it just on someone's phone. I think possibly a yellow is a fair call. I don't think you would have been overly surprised though to have seen a red.
For me, on first viewing, when it was at full pelt, I thought he's in dodgy territory here. But then when I watched the replay, And then I also dug up the IFAB laws, as I'm wanting to do. I think Chris Sutton and his punditry last night probably got it right to say that although he's seen them given, as you mentioned, a yellow is probably the correct call. I think it was careless. It might even have versed on reckless, but it wasn't excessive force for me. So I think a yellow is fine, but not a red.
My first impression was it was quite similar to Mugabe's, on Sunday at Motherwell. When I saw the clip back, I didn't think it was quite as high, which I think might have saved him.
I think with the Mugabe one, it was obviously a lot higher. There was also virtually no intent to kind of stop yourself either. I think at that Hatate kind of tried to pull out at the end. I think. I don't think the overarching thing for me is I don't think he actually had to go in like that at all. I think he was kind of caught up in the moment of chasing about and putting pressure on people. He probably could have stayed on his feet. I still don't think it's excessive force, but I think that's maybe why it verges into the careless and reckless. And as I say, with the IFAB stuff, that's still a yellow rather than a red. So I think he actually did get it right there, John Beaton. Now, from one he got right to one that I don't think he did get right. Next one is a disallowed Dyson Maida goal, which was disallowed for Georgios Giacomakis' handball. Now, it was great link-up play between James Forrest and Josip Juranovic down the right, as they did a few times last night with Matt O'Reilly and then with Tom Rogic in the second half. I thought they were the two of them linked up really quite well, actually. But Juranovic puts in a ball across. It takes a wicked bounce, hits Giacomakis' hand, and is then tapped in by Maida. Now, it used to be, Alison, that just touching his hand instantly and it was enough to disallow it. But again, I was digging through the IFAB stuff, and I've actually tweeted the exact wording of this one out because there's a pic doing the rounds from what I've seen on social media that's actually the English Premier League's kind of interpretation rather than IFAB's actual words. So go on to my Twitter and have a look for the full thing, basically. But it's been incorrectly ruled out for me. I think Giacomakis is in the process of trying to strike the ball from Juranovic's cross, meaning it's not an unnatural position for him to be in. And then when it hits the sliding United defender, it then hits his hand and rolls to Maida. So I think it's the wrong call. I think the rules back that up. Do you agree, Alison?
I do agree. I think there was a change in the summer too to those IFAB rules. That said basically, so long as it effectively, and I am offering an interpretation here, but effectively that it's not deliberate, that you're in the process, it's not unnatural, and it's not a deliberate hand to ball, but rather ball to hand. So I thought he was unfortunate. I thought it should have stood. I thought it was a legitimate goal. Overall, I think there's not the same onus on it or the same weight on it because it didn't matter. I think the fact that Celtic prevailed, but overall, I thought it should have stood.
Aye, the kind of IFAB thing, it is a change for this year. You're right. It was, as I say, it used to be just hitting a hand is enough. It doesn't matter what the context is. If it hits your hand in the box or whatever, then it's a handball. It's more about the unnaturally bigger thing and the player's body movement and stuff. The addendum that they put in literally says not every contact between the hand or arm and the ball is a handball offence now, and it's up to the referee to judge the kind of validity, I think the word is, that they use of where their hand and arm is. Now, obviously, John Beaton saw that and he's interpreted it as it's an unnatural position. I would argue that it wasn't, and it was quite clear it wasn't, because, as I say, he was in the process of trying to kick the ball. He didn't just have his arm up there for no reason. So I think it's incorrectly ruled out. But as you say, it didn't really matter in the end. The second goal was obviously primarily a Benjamin Siegrist error, but Giacomakis again sniffing about for scraps in the 6-yard area. I don't think you can overlook that.
No, I think he has a real poacher's instinct. I think no one would have expected Siegrist to drop that. I think most people, you're maybe caught on your heels because by the time you realise that there's an opportunity, he's maybe recovered his composure. So I thought he did well to gamble on it, to just take the chance that he might drop it. And I think that is a sign of an instinctive striker, is always looking and sniffing out for those opportunities.
I hate using the term old-fashioned, but it is a kind of throwback in it to like a proper poacher's way of thinking. That's what you get told when you're in youth football, or at least when I was in youth football, that's what you were told if you played up front, was just take the risk, gamble that the keeper's going to drop it, gamble the defender's going to make a mistake, always make it. You might not get it 9 times out of 10, but in the 10th you'll get the goal, that kind of thing. And he seems to be making a habit of this already.
Yeah, I think it does show that instinctiveness. I think, and I think so many of his goals have all come from the 6-yard box, from in and around the 6-yard box, I think, which would be reflective of that he's just waiting to pounce, really. But I think his return of late is good. I think that's 8 goals now since the turn of the year, since he resumed from the winter break. And I think he'll be quite quietly satisfied with where he is just now. I mean, I think he does a power of work. I really do think he works his socks off. He doesn't shirk getting back to put his shoulder to the wheel in a defensive sense. I think at times you can say he looks a bit clumsy at times, just given that his physicality. But I think there's definitely a role for him at Celtic, and I think he also offers scope to change things within games when everyone is fit and available, and you have Keogh go back. You're still going to have options to play in a different way with him in the team.
I mean, Ange Postecoglou said after the game about him that it's his presence, and I don't necessarily think he just means the physicality. I think he just means the manner in which he plays the centre forward position, as opposed to Kyogo or Maida or whoever. I mean, he mentioned himself that his goals are generally not quite pretty goals, but he still gets in there and he still makes it difficult and all of that. The thing that I would say is, perhaps unfairly, it was almost seen as a kind of Ayeti Mark II for a while. Like maybe he wasn't really the kind of striker that suited Celtic and suited Postecoglou and all of that. And there's maybe still underlying questions about overall suitability, but I think I agree with you. I think he has got a role, whether it's in the squad. It's probably not starting every week still, but certainly in the squad and playing games now and again. And the one thing with Ayeti, and this isn't to disparage Ayeti so much as to praise Giakoumakis, but even though Ayeti scored a couple this season, he did get a decent kind of chance in the team. But the one thing that struck me, and it was probably a confidence thing, was that if Ayeti missed a chance, for instance, against Dundee United in that 1-1 game earlier in the season, which was a sitter, you kind of didn't see him again the rest of the game. Whereas with Giakoumakis, if he misses one, he is back in the same position again 2 minutes later. He doesn't tend to let that get to him, and that probably feeds into why he's taking a gamble that Siegrist is going to spill that when nobody else would take the gamble, that kind of thing. So I think it's to his credit, and it was worth. Will we say 2 goals? I don't know. We're coming to the 3rd goal now. I'm still not convinced that he touched it, but he's certainly getting credit.
I think he did get a touch.
Well, we'll talk about the 3rd. I mean, to me, it wasn't necessarily. It didn't really matter who scored it, as Ange Postecoglou said. But I think we can chalk it up to a "we don't stop" type of goal. Rogic is fouled probably when he plays it past to Karamoko Dembele, who I was glad to see get game time after we spent a wee bit of time talking about him yesterday. But he doesn't stop Dembele. He doesn't wait to see if the referee blows. He plays to the whistle. He carries on, gets his shot away. All right, it's deflected, and I'm still, as I say, unsure that Giakoumakis even touches it. But either way, he was once again in the mix, causing problems, and it ends up in the net. And I think it came from, 1, Rogic still getting the pass off, but 2, Dembele playing at the whistle rather than assuming the foul was going to get given. Yeah,
I thought Dembele done well when he came on. Actually, I thought he looked hungry. I thought he looked keen to make an impression in the minutes that he got, and I'm sure he would have been. There may have been a part of him quite keen to try and claim it yesterday, because I think there was some ambiguity about who got the final touch. I think for me it was Giakoumakis. I did think he steered it into the net, just managed to get that clip touch to take it in. I think it might just have been going wide without it, but overall, I think, the manager will be pleased at the fact that at that point in the game, when it's comfortably won, that you're still going and you're still pressing for more goals, you're still harrying. And I think when you bring on young players and you see them burst a gut like that to try and make an impression, I think it augurs well for you.
I sent out a tweet from Y-Scout just outlining some of Josip Juranovic's stats last night, because I thought he was kind of low-key important. I thought he did a really good game without getting as much of the plaudits as maybe he otherwise would. But Ange Postecoglou highlighted his captain again last night, and I know you thought he did a really good game, Alison. Callum McGregor, Ange Postecoglou said on a pitch that wasn't easy to play the type of football that obviously McGregor is the kind of the pivotal cog in. He stepped up. He not only scored, but he was passing through the lines. He was keeping the possession, keeping his team on song. What did you make of his performance?
I think Callum McGregor has probably set such a bar for himself now that you expect a particular standard every week. But yeah, I thought he pulled the strings. I thought he was excellent in the middle of the park. I'd have to say I thought Matt O'Reilly had a very, very good game too. I thought he was excellent throughout. I thought, but yeah, I thought McGregor's goal was important, the timing of it and when Celtic got it. But I think even then you see him in moments in the game just talking to people round about him, urging people just to stay calm, to stay focused, talking them and guiding them through the game. And I think what you've really seen this season is a maturation of Callum McGregor and really growing in to that captaincy role. And it wasn't an easy captaincy to inherit, given that Scott Brown had, really made it his own for so long. But I think what you've seen this season is that he's very much his own man, but you've seen that influence just spread throughout the team.
It's almost the kind of perfect marriage at the right time, if you know what I mean. Not that I'm saying Scott Brown wouldn't have thrived under Postecoglou, I'm not saying that. But the fact that it's McGregor that's the leader, that's the captain for this kind of brand of football, this kind of new era and stuff, it's almost a twist of fate to it, I think. You wrote quite a good piece over the weekend on McGregor and he's what I called in the headline his ascendancy. I mean, he's been a key player for years, but it is different when you're the one with the armband week in, week out, and you're the public face of the club and all the rest of it. And I think basically what you said there is accurate. He's embraced it all and he's thriving. He's absolutely thriving in it. And it's this time of the season that you see that coming at the fore.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think if you ever had to look for an example of it, it's just to go back last month and turn up to play a game against Rangers that was the old proverbial 6-pointer, really a massive, massive game. And you turn up with a cheekbone that's broken in 2 places, you put on a mask and you go out and play. And I think that there's a certain kind of courage that comes from that, knowing that, if you take another knock, you could be in real serious bother. So, yeah, I don't think his leadership qualities are in any doubt at all.
Now, speaking of Rangers, a few of the comments are implying that I've maybe buried the lead somewhat here. After the win, there was a small matter of drawing Rangers in the semi-finals. Now, Ange Postecoglou's reaction was essentially a shrug. What's yours, Alison?
Yeah, I was watching the draw take place, and as soon as Celtic came out, obviously the numbers. I just thought I just had a feeling that it would be Rangers. So yeah, it's intriguing. It's a crazy start. I don't know if you've seen it. The one that Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, and Hibs have never all been in the semi-final at the same stage. It's incredible, but I think it will be mouth-watering. Let's be honest. I think everyone loves the games. It's a real it'll generate incredible amounts of interest, but it also raises, I think, the very distinct possibility of 3 games between Celtic and Rangers all in the course of probably a 3-week period, which you would set your hat on one of them maybe at least bringing some fireworks to it.
As you say, 3 Glasgow derbies in the space of a few weeks. Can they win all 3?
Well, that'll be the aim. Both teams will have that aim. Both will go in thinking, that you come out, and if you do, whoever prevails in all 3, you would have to think is in a pretty formidable situation then for what comes next. But I certainly think that will be the intention. It will be the ambition. It will be both teams will go to square up. That first one at Ibrox will go thinking, that can really shift the narrative in the title race, depending on how that one plays out. You would argue that a draw would be in Celtic's favour at Ibrox, but I don't think you could ever see Ange Postecoglou setting out his team to play for a draw. You know exactly how Celtic will play, you know how they'll approach it, and you know how Rangers will too. So I think both teams relish and play their best games when it's an open encounter. I think you could expect all 3 of them to be like that. But Celtic will take great heart from how they played in that February game, because they didn't just win the game, but they won it in a particular kind of way and with a particular kind of style, you would pinpoint it as one of the real performances of the season. I think, and I think that's now probably important for them going into the next book of games.
I agree. I mean, when me and Tony done were, I think it was last Thursday, we done the Ange Postecoglou 50 matches and picking out best performances. I picked the Rangers game not just because it was 3-0, but because the second half has even been overlooked somewhat, because Rangers had more of the ball and all of that. But to me, that was basically Celtic giving them the ball and saying, right, we're going to take a wee breather, see if you can make any inroads. And they also had a gear to go up, that kind of thing. So I think the whole performance was actually probably the best of the season. It wasn't just the first half like some people would make out. But I also think and I don't think they will fall into this trap, but they definitely can't fall into the trap of thinking it'll be the same type of performance that Rangers put in either. I think the majority of the fact that game panned out the way it did was Celtic's performance, don't get me wrong, but Rangers' distinct lack of fight as well that night did play a part, and I think they've changed their tactics since then. They've obviously been on a good run of form since then, so I wouldn't take it as a given that it's going to be a similar type of scenario. But that's for Celtic, that's for Ange Postecoglou to make sure that's the case. They thrive regardless of the changes that come with the opposition. And I think that's what he sets his team up to do every other week, to be honest. There's obviously other caveats when it comes to a Rangers game, but on the whole, I think that is what he'll do. You've got one here, you've seen Frank Brennan's comment there. This is the flip side of it. Frank Brennan also obviously says, win the 3 games and you rule Glasgow. It's a fair point from Steve as well, though. You can't lose all 3, that's for certain. Two different ways of saying the same thing, probably. John Curry, we don't necessarily need to win at Ibrox to win the league and move towards treble. That's true. You do need to win the cup, though. I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it, Alison?
Yeah, indeed. I think if you were to offer Celtic a draw at Ibrox now, they would take it because it doesn't change the complexion of anything at the top. But I think you know that they won't. You know that the intention before it will be to go and win it.
I suspect this will be something we see quite a lot. The title, this is what they were talking about when it was the Conference League as well. I'm still going to be greedy, just go for both and win both, basically. Easier said than done, I know, but I think that's got to be the target. There's no other target there, as I've said, Alison. I won't keep you any longer, but before we wrap up, I once again remind all of you that if you enjoy all of this, you enjoy the chat, you probably enjoy the articles that are on the website as well. So if you go to celticway.co.uk/subscribe, give us a go. Again, that'll be your good deed done. Keep me and Alison in the life we're accustomed to, and it's a win-win. So anyway, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for your contribution as always, Alison, and thanks for your comments, guys. See you all tomorrow.
Take care.